we had the table that was about audit AI, and preparedness for AI audits, which is, of course, everyone's most fun topic ever. So it's an important one, right? So I'll tell you that we kicked off the table by going to get drinks. That's how we were going to start off talking about audits. And if you don't have a drink, you probably want to grab one. Leah, thank you very much for doing the documentation. She was scribe for the table. Very much appreciate that. We got into some arguments at our table. And those arguments were great arguments, because one of the arguments is what comes first, the policy or the data? As in the chicken and egg, which a lot of the security leaders who are in here have often had conversations about. Do I create a policy, or do I say, these are the things that we're going to do, and then make sure that I can create a policy that matches what our capabilities are, right? This is a conversation that has gone on in many different companies, at least for my last 3 companies. We've had this conversation and had this conversation in my current company. So certainly getting that policy established, that was the vote that won at our table, right? I want to say logic ruled, but then I'd be like outing my friend Robert over here from Force Point, and I wouldn't want to out him. No, I'm just kidding. Patrick from Force Point. But the reality is, what we also agreed with was the fact that we have to be dynamic in the way that we are addressing this, right? We can create our policy, but then we also have to create our standards. So create our policy, because that is the fabric of what it is that we need to do. Aaron mentioned in the 7 different list items related to AI, where generative AI listed, which was number 4, I think you said, right? And Sean also stood up and, from a legal perspective, talked about the fact that policy was incredibly important. That is absolutely a fact, and that's the foundation and the base for what we are going to allow our audit partners to audit us against. So we say we have to have a policy as our foundation, our base, before we do anything else. Now, the fact is, we also know that AI is in use already. AI is today's marketing term, and we're talking about it like it's the hot shit of the day. But the reality is, we were talking about blockchain 5 years ago. Same shit, different day, right? And then 3, 4, 5 years from now, it's going to be some other thing that we're talking about. Same concept, what we're going to call something new that's already effectively in place right now. We have had the use of AI in place. We have been leveraging machine learning and pattern matching in place. So we're calling it artificial intelligence. And then the second thing is, and this actually was the first thing that we talked about beyond the argument, was how do we agree to a common taxonomy? How do we agree what AI is in our company? What is the focus of AI? Is it generative AI, right? Is it the pre-trained generative, right? Is that what we're focused on? Or is it just the use of AI because we are also leveraging contracts where their marketing company has, the marketing aspect of that company has decided that they're going to change their language and now say something is using AI, which means we now have to go back, review our contracts, and then figure out how to deal with that, right? All of that wrapping back to how do we address this from an audit perspective? So we have our policy, we create our standards, and then from that, we have to create some SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures. For people who have never worked in any type of manufacturing environment, SOPs are the foundation or the lifeblood of what it is that you're doing, and you are audited against those SOPs that are being followed, right? GDP, GMP, whatever you want to call it, right? Then you create your compliance framework and your compliance fabric, and then you have your operations and your testing that needs to go in place. Those are the things that we all agree to. Now, the second thing I want you to take away from this, the first one being create your policy. We all agree. You got to create your policy. That's your foundation. Second thing to take away from that, you may or may not have a policy, but go ahead and start with your self-identified finding or your self-identified risk and put that into your risk registry. Because when you do that, you at least are protected from the outside. Your external examiners, your third-party auditors, your federal side, there's some level of protection you are putting in place as a result of putting that in place by documenting what your risk is related to AI, the use of AI within your company. And so by putting that in place, when someone comes in, they know that you have at least thought about it, you've talked about it, and you have acknowledged the risks associated with it. And as a result of acknowledging those risks, when that audit is done from the outside, they can go look at it, say, we know that you've thought about it. Okay, cool. You're doing something about it. Yes, that's one part of it. The second part of it that we all agreed to was when our business partners, our internal business partners, decide that they are going to go and acquire something that is using AI, or your marketing team wants to say that they are using AI within their product set, you have a finding that can be written against your policy. Because if you haven't started with that foundational policy, what are you writing your findings against, right? What are you auditing against? And then you also want to help by creating the scope of what is going to be audited through your policies and through your standards. And if you can create your audit scope, you're actually helping your audit team, because the reality is, and this again we all agreed to, this is still coming about within our companies. The use of AI, again, we'll just acquiesce to the point that, yeah, it's been in place for a while, but now we want to call it something, we're marketing it as something. Okay, which means that the audit team now has to deal with that. So if they have to deal with it, how are you defining it for them, defining it for the company, and defining the scope of it? And if we define the scope of it, it allows them to have something to audit you against as an organization, which is going to help them, but it's also going to help you. Because now you know what the control frameworks are that are going to be leveraged. Now, there is a NIST standard on AI. There's an audit control framework on AI that NIST has already published. You should use it, right? And if you're too lazy to read it, use ChatGPT or Gemini to summarize it for you. That'll work, because, by the way, we did that. And it works, right? So, Lee, did I leave anything off of the table?
I mean,
anything?
you said it.
We good? Audit rocks. Get your drinks. Thanks, everyone.